Welcome everyone to Mezgers Only, episode 12. This would be 13, but I didn't I took December off, and I don't want to chase anybody down for December. But, it's holiday things. Let that one go. Pretty excited to do this with Wes because it's been, I've talked to him since the beginning, wanted to get him on, and then saw him at Rolex, and we finally set out some dates, and this happened to work out. So, welcome Wes to the
Yeah, it's a pleasure. People forget that January, where it's winter for everyone else, is kind of our insane time in Florida. So the next couple of months is every single weekend's a car event. So it's cool. We can link up during the week and get this locked in.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, it's been DRT, Rolex, like what's
Back to
Sebring will
back
be
to back
next,
to back. Yeah.
Amelia to the next thing. That's true. So I guess the first thing is, who is Wes? Tell us, I know Swine 11. I know about a bit about your background. I don't know everything, so I'm curious myself to know more about you, man.
Yeah, we're kind of going the way back, but yeah, I'm an enthusiast first. I do this for a living loosely. Right now, kind of a free agent, but I have Swine 11, which is a boutique parts manufacturer. We primarily do air cooled, but I'm going to venture and start doing water cooled and some of the other projects I really like and kind of tie in some consulting. But yeah, my background's motorsports. Been doing it for 25 years. Started with Japanese cars, got into Porsche, and then basically became full-time Porsche. Probably 10 years ago is when everything that I drove, got converted to be a Porsche. So my garage is exactly that right now. So it's a good place to be.
I mean, that happens to everybody. I feel like you get that first taste, and you're like, well, this is cool. I like this. It'd be nice if I had, maybe I should have a Cayenne. I should. Or maybe I should have something else if you don't have the water cooled or you don't have the air cooled, it kind of just keeps creeping up on you.
No, I have a 3-car solution right now that I'm pretty happy with. I've got my dailies, an Overland built 958 2016 Cayenne diesel, the last model year they made it. So that accomplishes daily driver duty. It's got a motion lift kit on it and some BFG KO3s. So, that handles trail duty, daily duty. I can tow the GT3 with it, kind of opens the door with that. I've got my 996 GT3, which I've had for a while. That kind of ties in the water-cooled Mezger GT car. And then I've got an 86 911, which gives me, the air-cooled, gets me in air-cooled rallies. And that's scheduled to be a Keen project. So that'll also kind of have safari off-road duty as well. Kind of a little bit of everything in the garage. I don't have any EV Porsches right now. I don't have anything mid-engine. I don't know if I've got any plans in the near future to acquire either. I'm pretty happy with what I've got. So.
Yeah, I mean, I had noticed that the pricing on those EVs has come down like crazy amounts, and so it's kind of like a daily Taycan kind of may work,
They're getting closer. Yeah, it'd be great at some point, to put the wife in one. They're getting tempting, but they're not quite there yet for me.
I mean, I don't love them, but I'm saying, not having to deal with a bunch of maintenance stuff on the other side of it.
My wife actually, Erica drives a Tesla Model Y, so we do have kind of the golf cart of the family, and that's perfect for cruising around town. We treat it like a golf cart if we're going for a short 4 or 5 mile drive, just, dropping off at school in the morning. There's no point starting a car up to drive it, a couple hundred yards and back. So that serves the purpose for that. So yes, we do have an EV in the family, but it's not a Porsche.
We just don't talk about it.
I like the car more than I thought I would, to be completely honest. This is a Porsche podcast, but I think a lot of people may have one in the family, and it's great for the fact that you don't have to think about it. You plug the charger in and there's no worrying about maintenance. It's not adding another one to the list, because as you start acquiring additional cars and the garages get more full, your maintenance on everything just starts stacking up over time. So that's the one car.
I think whether you realize it or not, I think you made a good point for having a Porsche, a fun car, because you just described like a toaster.
It allows the other cars to happen, which is great. There's times where that car fits perfectly and it fits the mold, but yeah, it is what it is. And as long as you go into it knowing that, that's kind of my scope on it. There's times where it's a great car. If you're sitting in traffic, I'd rather be in the Tesla than a GT3, but it's not something I go take to the mountains and try and get enjoyment of. It's a utility at this point. So
I can see that not being your first car. You're gonna let's go for it. So I know you're in the Japanese space. Like what's the last Japanese thing that turned you on to getting a Porsche? Like what did you?
I did a big stint at Titan Motorsports, so that's. And during my time there, I built this really crazy Mark IV Supra. It was 1,100 horsepower, OEM Plus, ridiculously clean. Texas 2Ks, which is a big Toyota Super National event, or it was at the time. The car won Best Super, I think, in 2007. So, it was best in class for what it was. And I love Japanese cars. I actually didn't really care for Porsche at the time. I didn't understand them. And then Nero Titan got a 996 twin turbo, speed yellow. And he was out of town at SEMA when it got delivered. So I had to go meet the delivery truck and pick it up and drive it to his house. And I remember, I had driven the Supra a bunch and it was fast and it did some things great. But the second I sat in that 996 twin turbo, like it just felt right. The pedal, the positioning in the car, all-wheel drive, power delivery. I just remember feeling like this was it. He got home and took delivery of the car. And I basically told him that he wasn't going to get the car. We're going to sell my Supra and that car's going to become my cars. Reluctantly he agreed, and I sold my Supra for, market high at the time. Still would be great money in today's market, but at the time it was, significant money, and it allowed me to buy the 996 twin turbo. So my first Porsche, I'm trying to think of, it was 24, 25, was a speed yellow 996 twin turbos. That kind of kicked things off. I was lucky to be in a position, and the Japanese cars, put me there. And ever since I got that car, I've pretty much had a Porsche in my life the entire time. That was the first Mezger car as well. And I learned a lot about the platform, developed a bunch of parts, kind of got on the parts development side of things then as well, for that car. Did a GT2 nose conversion on it, converted to rear-wheel drive, K24 18G turbos. And then about this time, we segmented a little bit of Titan's business to service Porsches too, just because we enjoyed it. It's still a Japanese performance shop, but we were supplying a lot of people with the K24 18G upgrades at the time. It was pretty popular in 6-speed and some of the other forums. As a performance wholesaler, we were the ones wholesaling that system. The other shops were installing, whether people knew it or not. I also developed a Tilton triple carbon street clutch for that. It was something I had in my Supra that I wanted in the Porsche. And at the time it was all-wheel drive. It was great. The problem was they had an application for a Porsche, but it was a really lightweight flywheel. So I worked with Tilton and we came up with what we called the boat anchor, and we moved the weight around the flywheel and tried a couple different iterations to still keep it light, but, get some inertia to where you could take off from the line. The Cup car clutches were great, but they're so light that it felt like driving a CGT, and I wanted something I could drive more. So, we worked to develop that. So that was another one of the projects that came from that car. And that car, I ended up keeping it for a while, and 08 happened, and it was time to get rid of it. And I sold it to a local doctor who wasn't affected by everything that was going on in the world at the time. So it was sad to see it go, but the time was right for me. The world was kind of crashing down, and I needed to make some moves. So I simplified my life, and that car went away at the same time. Because of that, at Titan, we went and bought the cheapest 996 twin turbo we could find at the time, which was a Polar Silver. I think it was a 55 or 60,000 mile car. We paid $40,000 for it, and then we used that as kind of an R&D platform and track car. Part of the hook was some people remember it at the time. We were doing a lot of track day stuff, but same thing. I tried to make it as light as possible. Document on 6-speed, GT2 front, a bunch of power. We developed a Motec plug and play for that car, bigger turbos. Did quite a bit, but it didn't gain a lot of attention. We were going to repaint the car, and I came up with the idea that, in between, why don't we just spray paint this car camouflage and just kind of make it different as a joke until we decided to paint it, a different color. And we did that, and it actually ended up taking off. Some people hated it, the purists especially, but the track guys loved it because it was this raw car, camouflage. If you scraped it or scuffed it or got any sort of track damage, you could just, repair that area and just give it a quick touch with Krylon, and it was good as new. So I didn't personally own a Porsche at that time, but I was able to, carry on. That was my development project, and spent a year or two developing that car. So I was still in a Porsche, but my daily driver at the time, I went back to BMWs, but was tracking and still driving a Porsche, around. It's kind of about when I caught the track day bug. That car, we did a bunch of DEs that year and as many events as we could. Terrorized some people because the car made really great power. I think it was, when we were finished, it was around 700 horsepower at the wheel on C16. So it was pretty powerful, and it handled all right. We took a bunch of weight out of it. I think it was 3,100 pounds or so, rear wheel drive only on slicks. So, I mean, it was a monster at the track, and we were going to DE days and PBOC. And I know you had Nico on. So that was kind of the DE Cup days. So while we weren't a GT3, we kind of terrorized a little bit and played around the track and gained those guys respect. And they had us in the corners, but in the straightaways, the thing was a monster. You just couldn't contend with it with an extra 200 or 300 horsepower at the wheel.
Yeah, that'd be nuts.
Yeah. So at the same time, I had a BMW. I was doing a lot of track days kind of in that car. And then my personal car had a Z4M Coupe. I had a lot of BMWs in the middle. I've had, I think a lot of Porsche guys start with BMWs, but I've had a lot of the fun ones, Z3M Coupe, Z4M Coupe, E46 M3. So, I've had this staple that I think a lot of people who listen that are in Porsches now kind of worked their way up, and I did the same thing. So we eventually decided at the shop to get rid of that car. It kind of run its course, and at that time I was still doing a lot of track days, and I had the Z3M or Z4M, and it was pretty quick at most tracks. I could hang with some of the GT3 guys, but I started to get cautious about the fact that it didn't have a cage and it wasn't really set up to do what I was trying to do with it. And rather than cut the car up, I said, you know what, it's just time to, it's time to get a GT car. So market was kind of soft at the time, and I swooped in and got my 996 GT3 at the absolute bottom, which is now about 15 years ago. So I've had it ever since, and I think I bought it with 28,000 miles on it. And now it's, I don't know, I think it's at 83 or 84,000 miles. So I daily drove it for a while, did some track days, got married, had a kid, and my track day time kind of dried up a little bit. So the car got relegated to street duty, but I still bring it out from time to time.
Makes sense. I mean, you gotta do that life balance at some point.
Yeah, it was good timing, bad timing. I was fortunate to have the car and buy it when I did. Just the amount of time that I had, life kind of got in the way where I wasn't enjoying it where it's meant to be enjoyed at the track. I've done some other stuff with it, Smokey's GT and taken up north, and we had great driving roads around here for a little while. But now as urban blight takes place in Central Florida, some of the good driving roads near my house are drying up, and they're putting huge developments around Claremont, some of the areas that people have known to drive around here. So unfortunately now it doesn't get used as often as it should, but I still love the car. I've got some great memories in it, so it's kind of sentimental at this point. It's hard to get rid of it, and I don't know what I would replace it with if I did sell it. I love air-cooled cars, but to build an air-cooled hot rod, I mean, it'd be deep in the six figures, and then sometimes I'll drive the 996 GT3 and realize while it is water-cooled, it's kind of an evolution of what those great air-cooled hot rod cars are. Everyone complains about the headlights. If you talk about pure driving cars, the 996 GT3, it's narrow body, makes great power. It's really a weapon, and just when you think you've got it figured out, it'll test you and remind you that, like, yeah, I'm a little bit more than you think. So, I love the car. I go through a love-hate with it. It's a lot of times it sits, but when then I drive it, I remember why I have it. Tell myself I should use it more. Life gets in the way, and it's an evolving cycle.
Well, I mean, at this point, you just get to see it appreciate every day, which is crazy to say because I don't think any of us thought we'd be in a position where that's a thing with these cars.
It's a slippery slope because I do remember the times when all these cars were getting tracked. I was around when the 4.0s were getting delivered and we were going to Sebring with them. The DE Cup days. Today I saw a car. I think it was a white 997 .2 RS that was 425 reserve not met. And I'm looking at it like, I think it was an 11 or 16,000 mile car. I remember a time when we're at Sebring and guys are paper plates and just destroying the cars, using them for what they're worth, having a blast. Packs 8, 10 of them, 4-liter paint to sample cars on paper plates at Sebring, and now these are just precious objects, and nobody's taking the track because the insurance values and what's required don't align with using them like they're intended to. So it's a wild place now when you look at even in the last 6 months to a year where the values have gone. But it shows the appreciation for what the cars are capable of. And they kind of tie back to that pure analog period where they kind of deliver the best everything, and it's hard to argue with that. So I'd love to see more of them get driven the track, but it's also nice to see them coveted and people enjoying them and adding them to their collections.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have both things because if you don't have preservation, you're never going to see it again.
No, and I've seen, I'm a member of Smokey's GT. I'm really good friends with Sean and the whole crew there. So it's been cool the past couple of years to see it cycle back. It started as track enthusiasts and a bunch of early GT guys, and then it started getting more modern. And then the past couple of years, there's been a whole parking lot full of 996, 997s, assembling. And some of the guys are getting the latest and greatest, love them, and then they go back and cycle back and go, you know what, I'd love to have a 997. And that's the car they bring in the mountains. And I think some of it's the size. The new cars are pretty sizable. I've been fortunate to drive, just about everything. And you do get into new cars and realize how big they are in those areas. And I think that, the 996, 997 really is a sweet spot for power, weight, what you can do with it. It really is one of the best driving cars there is.
Yeah, those roads do get narrow up there. I mean, in
Yeah,
any
yeah. I mean,
mountain
you see a
situations.
992 RS up there, and yeah, they're powerful, but you can put so much power down the twisties. They're so wide, you don't have a lot of movement. I mean, it's not the best environment for them. The track really is, but then you talk about the price of them, the running cost of them. It's wild that now it's cheaper to buy a cup car and run a cup car than it is to the latest and greatest RS. And some people I've seen are figuring that out. GT4S Club Sports, pop up, and GT guys have that they're driving the cars and coffee, and then they have their 4S they're actually using at the track. Both because of safety and because of running costs. I think the dedicated race car one's a street car that can also be used at the track, but they're weapons now. I mean, some of the times they're running at Sebring are incredible.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Club Sport, they did that came in Club Sport. They did the best job for making it economical for a track car.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with the setup, and I mean they're extremely quick too. There are some people using the 992 RS of the track, and I can really appreciate that. I do think the vast majority of them are just getting used to go to cars and coffee nowadays. Right now, I mean, there seems to be an influx of just the meme paint to sample, one of one spec, that gets driven to every cars and coffee in town. And the cars aren't really getting enjoyed for how they were designed to be, driven. And to each their own. It's the owner's choice on how to do it. But there really are better cars if that's what you do. It's just power on the street. I mean, a GT car. I've had turbos and I've had GT cars, and there's many times where if I'm going to Miami, like we just drove to DRT, I think about how boring a drive that is in a GT3. Whereas a turbo, it's a much better drive because of the power delivery. And most people,
Yeah.
it doesn't have the looks and the flash, but most people that are buying GT3s and RSs because they're the hot item, like really should be your turbo owners. Like if you're driving around on the street and taking your kids to school, like the turbo's your car, but the GT3 has all the flash. So right now it's, the hot thing. And I get it, but the turbo's such a great car as well.
I think so. I think they're underrated. I mean, just from, I don't know, just everything everybody thinks of them as an old man car, and it's really not. They have personality. It's just a little bit more.
Yeah, the personality.
For
Yeah, it's the personality's there. It's the flashy looks of it. You know what I mean? And I get why some people want that, but part of the thing that drew me into Porsche was the performance you get and fly under the radar. I'm kind of introvert in some ways outside of my friendship group, so you know, I've driven Lamborghinis, I've driven everything through other experiences, and there's nothing I hate more than pulling to a gas station and just getting pestered and bothered, and the guys driving with their cell phones about to run off your road because they're trying to take a picture. And the great thing about Porsche is you can have that performance and not have all the flash of a Lamborghini or Ferrari, and you can appreciate it, and it kind of flies on the radar. But now the big wing GT cars and the flashy colors are kind of complete opposite of that.
Yeah, I guess so. And people are just hunting that stuff down. I saw a few things out of Japan, 996 turbos or in some crazy colors, and I think that's just going to be the thing. One question I did have: did you build your 996 GT3? That's like everything you did to it. Is that all? Or
Yeah,
the way
my
it sits?
996 GT3 over time. So when I first got it, it got all the RS parts except for subframes, windows, and mirror caps. So it's got OEM RS front bumper. Had the steering wheel. I put the cup steering wheel, the Momo cup steering wheel on it now. Shift boot, has the European seat, so it's got the the Caros in it. KW Club Sport dampers, gyro disc, the whole suspension's RSS, numeric shifter, CSF radiators. I built long tube headers for it. So it's got long tubes with a GT3 muffler and a cup exhaust where I filled the tow hole. RS wing blade. What else does it have? It's got the crank damper on it. So really it's got every modification you could possibly want to do to it without, exploring displacement increases. I do need to do a regear still on the transmission. I've kind of held out on it. It's got a 4-liter clutch in it, but really that's the future list of things to do. It would probably be do the regear. Those are super important, those cars. One day it'd be great to increase the displacement just to make it a little bit rowdier. I get used to power, but
like 4 liter or 4.1?
yeah, I'd just do a 4 liter on it, to be honest. A 4 liter, with a short ratio box, or ring of pinion probably would just cover it. And it's an aero body, 295 tire car. So, I mean, that power in a package like that would be pretty fun. A little bit slippery, so.
Yeah,
And then I might change the wheels eventually. I've got a bolt-in roll bar in it now. I had the mint green bar in it, mint green calipers, just kind of accents, which I did 10 or 15 years ago when mint wasn't a thing, Ruby Stone wasn't a thing. Now I've toned it down a little bit. Like I just put a new raw roll bar in it just to kind of give it a more old man spec look. Eventually may change the wheels. I'd love to put 88s on it, but just not a priority right now.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you got time to wait on them. I mean, well, you might not have to wait, but yeah.
I think it's starting to catch up, which is cool. I mean, the prices have definitely gone up. Tariffs have affected it. BBS's bankruptcy, but I've helped some clients get some sets recently, and they're readily available. And some of the prices are starting to normalize because the premium's not there for having them in stocks.
Yeah, I mean, it is a race wheel too, so I mean, you got to constantly check that thing for cracks and things like that, and mark them.
Yeah,
do all the normal things that no one tells you that now you have to do as owning a race wheel.
It's a motorsports wheel. I mean, you're buying a BBS motorsports wheel, so and right now I have HRE P40s in the car, which are a great wheel. I mean, that was derived from their IMSA Motorsport days when they were making those, or Grand Am. So when those came out, I got those, and they're pretty lightweight. They're black, so I don't mind the wheels I have on it now. Just I've got a crew of buddies with GT3s, and everyone's got 88, so they're always pestering and bugging me. So
yeah,
shout out to Big Lou and Sunil. We that's the 996 GT3 Brotherhood. Yeah. We've all had these cars, and we had a mileage race going on for a while, and we kind of owned them all the same period of time. The long haul GT cars. So
yeah, I didn't know your first foray was a 996 turbo. And my dad's he just had the spoiler, the Rams and the spoiler fail, so he's going through that, figuring out what he wants to do next. He's talking about doing the E-Rams, and then he's talking about getting into just a GT2 spoiler, yeah. And I'm like,
I would have done the GT2 wing then. No, I mean, back then I had like a GT2 style wing blade. I think it was Misha Designs did it, where it's still raised and lowered. But then I had the OEM GT2 front on it. Great car. I had HRE P40s when they first came out. I got one of the first sets for it. Painted seat backs. It was a really high option car. The irony of that car, it originally was owned by Craig Lieberman, Fast and the Furious fame. So when he sold the Supra, he bought, I think, a Diablo and then that 996 twin turbo, and he had it for a short time, and then we acquired it. So really big ticket option car, extended leatherware, deviate stitching. I do that's one of the, I don't really miss cars that I sell, but that's a great car that at some point, if it ever came back, and I'd love to have it because it it drove great, and it had all the right stuff.
It's a cool story too.
I like 7s, 901s, 992s, but the 996 doesn't bother me. The interior's grown on me quite a bit when you own them this long. And like I said, I've been fortunate to drive a ton of 997 2RSs. I helped you get your car. I've spent a lot of seat time in these cars. Through friends.
You've seen mine on track too, so that's
yeah. I've been on track with your car. I helped Nico sort out the cars that led to that one and the other cars. A lot of these guys would trust me with the cars to kind of. I'm known for being pretty detail oriented, so guys, when they go to town, will leave me the car and just say, "Hey, take this around, figure out what's wrong with it, let's get it fixed and dial it in." So I've got a significant amount of seat time and just a bunch of different cars. I don't really have any favorites. My driving style changes a bit more now, so I've kind of approached the point where, at least in Florida, it's really difficult to enjoy some of these cars. You really got to take them to the mountains, and then with our super speeder walls and everything that's come into play. I've gravitated a lot more towards the air-cooled cars right now, just because, they're slower, smaller tire, lighter, but you can drive them at the limits on the street, pretty close to it, and have a lot of fun, and you're not doing those triple-digit speeds. So lately, I've gotten a lot more into that. There's some other fun that comes along with the air-cooled cars that everyone knows. The costs are going up. Building them is not a cheap endeavor, but I've learned to like those quite a bit more. And technically, if you really think about it, they're not considered Mezgers, but they are Mezgers. I mean, that was Hans Mezger's original design. So, I mean, it's not, everyone thinks of the Mezger as the water-cooled version, but the case was Hans Mezger. So, when you really go back to the lineage, the case in my 996 GT3 is not much different than what was done prior in the air-cooled cars. So,
yeah. It's a 964 block, so
Yeah, it all tracks the same lineage, so they do make a bunch more power. That's the hard part. Air cooled horsepower is very expensive, but the reality is you can buy a 996 GT3 for the price of a really good air cooled 4 liter. I mean, a lot of people don't think about that when you really
it's
look at
true.
these prices of what stuff's going for now. I mean, $425,000 a day, that car in reserve not met for a car that likely was it was lightly tracked, when it was first delivered. And now, there's a lot of choices when you start getting those big boy price ranges. So I really look back and go, these cars were a bargain for so long, and just people kind of let them slip by, and now they're super coveted, which is cool.
There's still some stuff out there. I mean, I still think the play is buy something in Europe, put it in a garage out there, and just bide your time. Because
Yeah,
you're
you're
still
starting
under
to.
buy a bunch. Because I had a friend, he's like, "Oh, you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." I popped on a couple sites I know about. I found a pumpkin in like 2 seconds. And even if he was to bring it over right now with tariffs, I mean, if you're waiting, you may not see a tariff, you may not see tax. And like, the situation can change. It was still well under market here.
There's
Well
a
under
lot of really
market.
good stuff hiding in the Middle East in terms of specs and
Yeah.
things. I mean, it's
Yeah.
the same deal. You start getting 25-year rule, and uh, there's some really cool specs that'll probably show the light of day. Were just cars, that people didn't realize how cool they were. I've got some friends over there that 996, 997 GT2 Club Sports, no wild colors. They're never for sale, but at a certain point, what it's going to take to the 25-year on those cars, yeah, you would need to buy them and sit on them. But there's some really cool specs. Air cooled, everyone went to Japan, but water cooled, the money was everywhere else. So it'll be
Yeah,
interesting
true.
to see when those cars start trickling and kind of what the trend is at that point.
Yeah. See if the pricing's changed. And I mean, there's some stuff in Thailand as well. And then, yeah, there's stuff that's hidden everywhere. It really would be nice to start seeing people show it, even if it's, not going to be in
Yeah,
the
yeah, a lot
state
of it's in
or,
private collections, but it's pretty wild when you see that like some of these private collections start either something happens to the owner or they need to find new homes. It's not Porsche related, but if you look at the Ferrari collection they just sold to Mika, that was a whole lot of cars that was never for sale that suddenly everything became available at once. You've got these collections now that Jerry Seinfeld's starting to sell off some of his cars. You get to a point as a collector where you have too much and your life changes and suddenly your interest changes a little bit. You need to thin the herd. So
do
I
you
think
think
it's
that's going to be
allowing.
the trend? Do you think that? Do you think it's going to be the trend for just selling now? Just put it in a bulk amount of cars, and it's the collection versus trying to individualize the
These
like ones and
auctions
twos type
these
things.
auctions really needed if you think about it. I mean, Meekham's local, so I went there, and if you really look at that whole Hemi Mopar stuff that was selling for big money in '08, now if you walk around and see the guys that were there bidding on that stuff earlier in the week, and 10, 15 years from now, unfortunately, they're not going to be physically able to drive some of those cars if they're still on this earth. These auction houses are already competing with Bring a Trailer, and everything's going online. They've got to do something to draw that crowd into the live auction, the live bidding. So they got to really acquire and give those guarantees on these big collections to be able to, drum the interest. That Ferrari collection seemed to have paid off. Yeah, I think as we, for that to continue on and to compete with, the capped commissions, there's really only a way to do that. So I think those auctions have been in with those collectors because they've sold them all the cars and they're willing to guarantee them a number to get the cars out. So I think we'll start seeing a bit more of that. I question there's a lot of collections that have a ton of cars that aren't being used that are just sitting. And you get to a certain point, I think anybody does, where you just look around and say, "Wow, the upkeep and the overhead just to look at this stuff is kind of out of control." And maybe some people thin down. And we saw a lot of hoarding with the 991, 992 generation. And if you think about it, everyone looks at what happened to the air-cooled cars and what was happening in Japan. All the cars we're seeing now were coming from the money was in Japan, so they were being hoarded. And people are trying to be the future version of that. But if you're back then, nobody knew there was going to be low mileage examples wanted. You know what I mean? That there were something because they were delivering miles and everyone was driving the cars. But take the ST, for example. You can look around. There's probably 100 STs out of the whole batch right now sitting with delivery miles that are just, appreciating, but they're not being driven. I mean, people are speculating more now than I think they were then. So there's more of a supply of these low mileage cars, and they just kind of trade hands around to certain groups of people. You know, if you look back at the 996, 997, you know, GT cars that were much more limited numbers of production. I mean, you're talking sub 1,000 for most of them. 997 GT3s are extremely rare. 2RSs, you know, so if you look at the numbers game of those versus Lord knows how many 997, you know, 3RSs are out there right now. It seems like every Cars and Coffee has 7 or 8 of them, you know. So I think we'll see some changes, and you start to see these cycles happen. When everyone gets paint to sample, suddenly white becomes a rare color. You know, if you really think about it, like
standard palette colors, it's
the
crazy.
standard palette covers and the less flashy stuff becomes the rare stuff because everyone's trying to get the rare stuff and everyone's ordering the ruby stones and the, you know, what's 992.2 Tourings now. Everyone seems to be the green Neo. You know,
Yeah.
once a color has Neo behind it, it's not the hot trend anymore.
No, it was hot way before that.
It was hot before
something.
that. Porsche saw it,
Yeah.
threw some metallic in it. Now it's Neo, and then you're going to see every dealer's going to have 2, 3, 4 colors and, you know, Macans in it before long. So I think that's the cool thing is speccing the cars right now. It seems to be the appreciation is going towards, you know, CXX, both good and bad. There's some really great specs that come out of that program, but there's some horrendous specs that, you know, that are happening. These recommissions are popping up now. Who knows how that's going to last? Our generation doesn't seem to care about numbers matching stuff, which is great, in my opinion. You know, we care about resto mods. It's wild that we live in a place that a singer will hit the hammer at an auction for more than an original, you know, 993 RS.
Yeah,
Even some
but
really low mileage stuff. I mean, you're talking RSRs are almost singer turbo money, and it's wild how many cars they've been able to deliver. They've kind of set the market and allowed the customizers and the rest of mods to have value, which is great. I really appreciate that side of it because they've created a market for other people to do resto mods and customs and still have some equity. And I dare use that word in that environment, but guys can decide they want to build their dream car and they're not going to take a total bath on, you know, restoration anymore, which is great when
yeah,
done properly.
I agree with that. I mean, with Singer, this controlled their market. I think that's one, they went for the most high-end product you could possibly make for the 911. Also controlled their market as far as, you know, limited, that they follow the Porsche recipe, you know,
Yeah.
limited colors, exclusive, buy it back. Like it's not really changing hands.
They do a
you
great
know?
job. I mean, out the box, the car is, you know, it's phenomenal. You know, it's spec'd, you know, somebody with a design background, it's spec'd and designed, you know, almost to perfection. And then the next one comes out, the Turbo is a fantastic model. You know, their objective was to deliver a more modern version of the Turbo, and they've done exactly that. You know, there's a price for it, but with that price comes a quality. And they've been emulated so many times and knocked off without the same quality. And it's like they say, everything's important. The guys that everything's not important, you can see the difference between somebody that tried to copy a singer and what a real singer is. So I think there's some appreciation for those guys and what they've accomplished. Our whole industry owes them a debt of gratitude. And, you know, now you're seeing it with more modern cars. You look at what Ray Hall's doing with the CGTs. It's fantastic.
Mm.
It's taking cars that were kind of boring specs because it was safe for the dealers. That's what they wanted to order, was silver with terracotta for some reason. And you can go spec it how you want it. And now 4 liters are getting recommissioned. You know, guys are building the cars they want for themselves. And I think that's really cool to see.
Well, I mean, there's just a whole generation that wasn't able to buy them brand new. And so that's the ability to spec it. And then that's what I was going to ask. It was like 4 liters, where I'm going to see everybody get a 4 liter in their car. But if you could, I mean, I don't know what that would cost you from Porsche to recommission. Like, hey, get the 4 liter with the RSR crank that you probably have laying around somewhere. Like, that would be.
What's wild is there was a time where the engines, you know, there were crate engines available from Porsche. I know of one person that had a car that at the time they went to the dealer and paid, I don't remember what it was. I want to say it was $68,000 for the parts, you know, at the time to put it in engine blue. So I was just go to the dealership and get a 4 liter and was able to. So I know of one car that has it, and you know, there's a lot of autometric 4 liters out there and Sharkworks 4 liters out there, and it's wild when you look at the price difference between something original and, you know, that's where numbers matching matters. Whereas I've had some friends that have actually stolen aftermarket 4 liter cars that essentially drive very similar because they're factory parts for a quarter of the price. So you have guys buying the most expensive 4 liter, and then you have guys that are buying, you know, standard RSs, convert them to 4 liter, and the delta price difference is incredible. Like the fact that people are recommissioning 4 liters now is just, it's wild to see, but it's really cool.
I mean, yeah. And I mean, somebody's imagination to figure out a new color that we never thought about, an interior package that wasn't ever available.
Yeah, and most that I've seen done are tasteful, which is great. And at the end of the day, those are designed to not be sold. That's something that wants to. That was the car they wanted, so they're building for themselves. And yeah, I'm sure they're going to get offered some ridiculous money and have to consider it. But most of the guys that see me doing that, that's their prize at the end of an accomplishment in life, and that's what they want. So it's cool to see that. And I think events like Smokey's GT, raising money for great causes, your event, getting people to the mountains to drive the car and the camaraderie of it, it's really, brought more people in. Every year we go home from Smokey's, and my friends that weren't able to attend were immediately start looking for cars again. And it really starts to shift the market. We're kind of trending towards some events will cause people to purchase cars just to get into that club. There's air-cooled events. You have to have this car, you have to have that car. And I think there's something cool about that too, that you have to make a commitment to get into it.
Yeah. Oh, I'll talk to you offline. I have something else cooking.
All right.
Yeah. It's pretty just interesting that this whole market's going and where the collectors are going, where the drivers are going, and people are still driving these cars. I hope, but I feel like after seeing Vin and Andrew sell his 3RS, I just wonder if that's just the thought in everybody's mind that's had at least a little bit of like equity, like you put it earlier.
I have a couple friends that, I have some friends that have pretty sizable collections and great cars, and everything's for sale at a price. And some of these things that are hitting the market right now are getting near or well above those prices, and having people to consider, like, what could I do with that money? Or what
For
else could
sure.
I drive? What else could I drive for that? They're phenomenal cars. If you really look at, if you sell an RS for 450,000, like, you can go to the dealership and buy a brand new one and still go at 993 at the same value. You know what I mean? Like, it's wild when you start to do the mental math of like, I don't enjoy this car as much as I used to, or I don't get to drive it as much as I used to. Could I purchase something else that in my current driving style I could use more often?
It's a
And I
discussion
think
for sure.
but the same thing happens when you start getting that price range to where, that 400, 500, 600 range, the options of your choices are significant. You've got STs in that range. You've got, GT2s. You've got some really rare earth in terms of colors and specs, really, become available then. And people have to go, wow, I love this car, but I'd really like to try something. And I think I've probably, because of my attachment to my car, I've probably missed the boat on owning other cars that I would like to drive. And even now I look at, kind of what I have in the garage. I'm really happy with what I have. So there's not a lot that tempts me. So I just keep the cars, and then they're off the market. But I don't, I didn't get to own and take those appreciation curves on 991s like some of my friends, and 992s and GT4Ss. And, I've been around them, but I haven't got to own them and have that full ownership experience because I'm so attached to the cars that I have. And, there's some good and bads to that.
Yeah, I mean, but there's something to be said with actually like fully owning it. I mean, and versus still getting to experience it, because maybe you wouldn't have lived with it as well as you liked it when you experienced it. So I mean, there's
Yeah, I have friends. Some of my friends have 997 RSs and don't think they're worth the hype, and they own them. They really hyped them up in their heads, and they really wanted them, and just for how they use the cars, they get more enjoyment out of something else. It's fun talking points. It gives us all something to talk about. I mean, this is why we're having a podcast about it. So it's like these stupid discussions that we nerd out on this single make brand, where we're really talking about the evolution and small changes of things, and how it's life changing. These cars bring people together, which is cool.
So money, no object. You get to restore whether a 3.8 RS or 4.0, doesn't matter. What do you get a 4.0? Do you restore that? What color do you do? That sort of thing. Like, would it be white? Or do you have I'm sure you always have some fun colors. I know you've spec some stuff in birch before.
No, you know what? I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 directions I would go with it. But, money, no object. I like that. I like that cream 3.8 RS that Friedman had a while ago. The cream wheels, something like that. Just still subtle, but a unique spec. There's something like that. 4.0s are always 4.0s. They're amazing. I don't know if I used to think I would want like one of the unique paint to sample colors, but now the values have gotten to the point where, yeah, I'd love to go buy one, but then, driving it around would be very difficult, in this area. So yeah, I'd probably go with, some really cool RS or something like that if I were sticking with something water cooled. I really trend
chiffon
back
action.
towards, yeah, I really check. Lately, I've been going back to, just for how I get to use the cars around here, is some real hot rod, light air cooled cars, short wheelbase, our grip style build. Those are really tempting me to build something like that, nowadays. And look, safari cars, call them trendy or not, everyone that says they're trendy hasn't got to go out with a pack of 5
They're
or 10
fun.
of them and beat the hell out of them. They're still a blast. And you get up in the Carolinas, and everyone loves the mountain roads up there. But then when you add in the fact there's just as many fire roads and gravel, those kind of cross both ends of the spectrum. I think there's something to be said with a really good, safari car, especially for where we drive, Appalachian Mountains and kind of Blue Ridge area. So I'd probably track right back towards that. Not really a Mezger, but still a Mezger in my mind.
Well, there's still, I mean, there's some guys out there. I don't know if you've seen the retro mods doing it with Mezger motors, which is interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
Same here.
I've
I'm like,
I've been fortunate to spend quite a bit of time with Gamroth, and man, it's tough to beat one of his 4 liters. I mean, air cooled, just a really bitchin' hot rod. I mean, that's all you need in a car like that. Why complicate it with trying to put a water cooled engine, and then you're dealing with, a gearbox that's much larger than was intended to go in the car, and you got stuff that goes along with that. A proper setup 4 liter at the right weight with the right tire is really tough to beat.
do you think outside of Autometrics is always a name, that we're going to have a Metzger person or something, like, because I know there's air cooled engine builders, but we're all just going to need water cooled engine builders at some point because these cars are getting vintage. Like, who's going to be our head pink or our camera? I wonder.
There's too much demand. The parts have gotten much more expensive. I mean, Autometrics does a great job, and there's really not that many guys, because the air cooled engines are in such demand right now that most of those, really great builders, they're turning work away. I mean, it's wild to see the prices that they have to charge for what they do, and then to turn work away. I mean, it's an incredible position to be in, but it doesn't leave a lot of room for, someone that's going to do the water cooled stuff. I think there's enough guys that are coming from the racing side. There will probably be guys that spin off from that and then kind of trend that direction. But most of it's factory parts and factory assembly. So, I think we'll start to see more of it. Sharkworks kind of lay the ground floor. Autometrics has built a ton of bitchin' motors. There's other people who have done it. Yeah, machine shops these days are few and far between. And I don't know, there's not many of the younger generation. It's like, if you want to, with AI and everything else, if you really want to earn a great living, go learn how to build an engine from the best guys, or go how to learn to be a tuner. I mean, those are two things in super demand right now, regardless of what type of vehicle it is. I mean, you're writing your own check to do whatever you want at that point.
Makes sense, for sure. I mean, that's just what I thought about it. I was like, I don't know who's learning. I don't know any of our friends. Like, oh, you know what? I'm building motors this weekend. Like, I'm going to start doing that.
Yeah, nobody wants to go and just say, I want to open a machine shop. I mean, there really isn't in Florida, where there are some around, but they're really good ones, or best kept secrets. And there's still not a huge influx of places that you can trust to do that top level work, both engine and everything else of the car. I mean, there's some great shops in Florida. The racing side gets most of them, but in terms of shops putting out that quality work, I mean, it's on a hand or two.
We'll see how things go. I mean, especially as things keep appreciating. I doubt that we're going to see a market turn down.
No, you won't. But then they become much more coveted to kind of want to modify.
Yeah, one of the guys in the Middle East reached out to me. He was like, yeah, so a couple 4.0 sold. A PTS one he sold like 2.8, somewhere around there. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, it's going like that, huh?
Like, a lot of money for a paint job. I mean, I love the paint to sample cars, but you really look like the labor and what it takes if you wanted to strip it down to a tub, and
Well, for sure. I mean, even if you're doing the most primo paint job, say it's costing you $100,000. I mean, say it's just like, it's not $1 million over a regular 4.0 color. It's just not.
It's to be that unique person. But then the ground floor has been laid by Singer and by Ray Hall and everyone else, that you can have that unique spec, and nobody cares. Nobody's ever asked what the original color of your Singer was when you restore it. When it gets done to that level, no. So, I mean, I guess there might be a point where you see people, some shop could pop up and do those blank checkbook style builds for 996 and 997s, the guys that really know the cars. And And if you look at the time, the people that were racing those cars at the time, IMSA or Grand Am at the time wasn't really a spec series. It's a time where people are still building their own race cars. The crew guys really had intimate knowledge of the cars. It wasn't show up to the track with a really spec car and a rule book that kind of confined you, to the levels of data that they have now. But back then you could assemble a car and run in GS. You could go buy a showroom floor and build a car and run in Grand Ams. There's a whole level of people that, if you really look back at some of these great shops, are founded from guys that were running during that time. So we'll see what happens to the next generation if they kind of mentor an apprenticeship with those guys, if there's enough people to gain some of the knowledge before it goes away.
Otherwise, we just have to lean on AI. Look it up.
Yeah. I mean, we call him a Mezger motor because of a guy named Hans Mezger, and hopefully there's some people that were, with him till the end,
Taking
sucking some of the
notes.
knowledge off and, taking
Yeah.
know that's really what it comes down to.
All right, man. I think we're almost at an hour, so we can call it. I've asked all the questions I want to, know about and learned a bunch.
Yeah. Appreciate the time. And yeah, we're pumping out some new stuff. I'm going to focus a bit more on Swine 11. I've got some other stuff in the works that I'm not quite ready to talk about in the Central Florida scene. Got some great friends doing some cool stuff. So, hopefully there'll be some more pop-up type things around here. And yeah, there's some good stuff in the works, but nothing set in stone quite yet. So I'm always looking for fun projects.
Yeah, same here.
Cool. Well, it's been a pleasure, man.